Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Poach from the Burning Glass marketing team, and I will be your behind-the-scenes host today. I would like to welcome you to Burning Glass webinar, Using Labor Market Data to Empower Your Students' Career Pathway Decisions, where we will see how 3 Penn State University professors used Burning Glass data to create their career discovery module for their chemical engineering students. First, some housekeeping items. All participants are muted for this webinar. We invite you to use the Questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel to enter your questions, where we will address as many as we can during our Q&A session at the end. If we are unable to answer your question on today's session, then a Burning Glass team member will follow up with you directly. We will begin our session today with an overview of the Career Discovery module from our 3 guest speakers, followed by a brief overview of Burning Glass technologies. Lastly, all registered participants will receive an email with a link to a recording of this webinar, along with some additional resources mentioned throughout today's program. And now let's meet our speakers. Monty Alger is the past president of AICHE and current professor of chemical engineering at Penn State University. Prior to Penn State, he worked in industry for over 30 years. Daryl Veligal has been part of Penn State University for over 20 years, where he is a distinguished professor of chemical engineering. Daryl is also the president of Molecular Processes Company, an innovative engineering company with the expertise in chemical process industries. And John Jordan, who will be kicking off our session today, directs the Professional Doctorate in Information Studies at Syracuse University, after teaching at the Penn State Business School, where he was a colleague of our other guest speakers. John is also the author of books on robots and 3D printing, with another study of online video coming from MIT Press next year. We will also briefly hear from Burning Glass Partnership Director Gretchen Novak for assistance with the Q&A session and to highlight some Burning Glass products discussed in today's session. Now, I'll pass the floor to John Jordan. John?
Thank you, Aaron. Next slide, thank you. Thanks for inviting us. This is a great chance to share and get some more ideas. This is not something that we've got this thing figured out and isn't it wonderful, but rather here are some first steps and looking forward to interaction with both Burning Glass folks and people on the conference, hearing about more ideas for this. 4 main points we'll make. One is to overview the career discovery process, which is basically a matter of finding, building, and sharing your story. This is for undergraduates primarily, although we've had master's and doctoral students also find this very useful. And changing the mindset from I have a degree in X to I have a set of stories and a set of skills connected to those stories. And so it's a reframing of the person as a job candidate, as a career aspirant, things like that. Second point we'll come back to several times is begin with the end in mind. It's pretty hard to get someplace if you don't steer toward it early on. How do you think of yourself as a bucket of skills, not a degree? And this is very much a Burning Glass insight that we're building on. And then finally, when you start digging into skills market data, you find a lot of surprises and opportunities, but it's very different from people who think, oh, I chose a major, therefore I have a career. In fact, that's really not the story, and that's been kind of shocking in our experience to see how students are jarred by that realization. Next slide.
So there's a YouTube video by Matt Siegelman talking about the Burning Glass technology. And one of the points he makes is there's not a jobs market, there's a skills market. And this is something we found to be true in our experience, that typically a degree can be thought of as a bundle of skills. And as you move through your career, different skills and experiences will be important. Burning Glass has a segmentation where they look at baseline skills and specialized skills and digital skills. And we'll make use of this as we go through this presentation. And it's also part of what we've done to design this career discovery process. Daryl?
Next slide. So the traditional view from a university and on education is I choose a major or curriculum, I go through 4 years, spend a lot of money on the tuition and room and board, and I start my first job. And when things move slowly, that works fine. But the world has sped up a bit. And so this loop, the things that you say, I wish I had known back then, as Steve Jobs talked about in his Stanford commencement address years ago, it's hard to connect the dots looking forward. You can really only connect them looking back. And while we can't predict the future, one way we can increase the ability to so-called look back is to decrease the time of this iteration. So if you can make some choices up front, then go through a shorter period and make an educated guess at a first job, now you can go back and say, I wish I had known while you're still in school. So you try to decrease this time in this loop by approximating what that first job might be. Go to the next slide, please. The career discovery process says, okay, I am going to choose a major. I'm going to learn some skills. I'm going to gain some experiences. I'm going to learn about some people and some communities. And I'm going to try a first job, maybe an internship or a co-op, or maybe something even at your university. Now I'm going to go back, and instead of waiting 4 years for that, I'm going to go back into the labor market and do some discovery there. And how do you discover that? Well, there's this data on Burning Glass that talks about the skills that you're going to need for various positions, the skills that are going to be valuable for you, and so on. So you approximate one of your what we call 5 futures. These are visions of what life might look like 5 or 10 years from now, where you're going to live, what kind of job you're going to have, what are the skills you're going to need. Then you create a skills grid. We'll talk about this later as well, which is an inventory of the things that you know how to do and that you can do effectively. So now you go from that skills grid and the 5 futures back to what skills do I need? And you add those skills and experiences. You iterate to your next experience. We're showing it going into the first job. You integrate into that, and you do some more discovery on what does the market need from me, and keep going in this loop much more quickly than 4 years. And the key question you might want to focus on here is not what will I do in 4 years, but what might I like to do in 5 years or 10 years, so that I can start thinking about the skills and experiences I'm going to need for that now. Next slide.
So I want to go through just a little bit of data from Burning Glass as an example, and we'll use this information and talk about chemical engineering, but it's very general, and you can look at any discipline, any major, any market sector. So this page here has the total US job postings. There's about 39 million open postings right now. And you can see the industries on the left-hand side: healthcare, retail, manufacturing is number 4 in terms of total job postings. And then the employers are on the right-hand side, where you see Amazon, Anthem Blue Cross, Lowe's, and others. Those are the top employers for the overall market. And it's possible then to segment by degree, location, all sorts of things. So I go to the next slide. This is the same 39 million jobs, but now broken out by program of study. So where a program of study is specified in a job posting, the number 1 program of study is business administration. Computer science is number 2. There's over 1 million job postings available today for computer science, nursing, general engineering. And then way down at the bottom is chemical engineering. And while chemical engineering has a lower number, there are many opportunities for chemical engineers in many sectors. And oftentimes companies may post jobs, not just for chemical engineers, but more broadly, seeking someone with a certain set of skills. On the right-hand side is the grouping of the overall skill clusters for those 39 million jobs. And when you look at those skill clusters, it's a little hard to make sense out of what exactly is needed for a specific job. So it's good to go from these skill clusters in the top level and then drill down with more specificity. So if you go to the next slide, this is a segment of the same jobs, the job database, only focusing on chemical engineering and process engineering as skills. In that case, there's 89,000 jobs open. And you'll see on the top left there, the top employers for looking for those jobs. And then on the left-hand side, the specialized skills required, and then the right-hand side, baseline skills. Baseline skills are generally common skills. They're transferable across all jobs and professions. In fact, when you look at baseline skills for any job, Communication always comes out as number one. Teamwork, collaboration, problem solving. These are skills that are necessary for any job in the marketplace today. In specialized skills, companies very often, when they're hiring, they appreciate it if you have a background in thermodynamics, heat transfer, and so forth. But they hire people based on skills in terms of process engineering, chemical engineering, to be able to improve manufacturing processes, to design and launch new products. And so those specialized skills are market-based. And then what we've been doing is looking at how do we take the core curriculum and what additional skills can we add as part of that curriculum to prepare students for their first jobs. And so that's a part of what we've been doing as part of this career discovery, is trying to intervene then with some additional course material to supplement the existing core curriculum. And while this is for chemical engineering, the same concepts apply no matter what background or what market area. On the next slide, there's some additional data, and John will talk about this.
So we resliced the numbers here, and we remember that basically they flipped computer science and general business administration. And then as you go to the right, you get the companies that are hiring in those domains. One of the points to look at is, if you look at, let's see here, sorry, I can't see because of the panel. There we go. On the far right, Shell Oil looks like they have one chemical engineering job. Now, part of using the burning glass data is to start to have a little bit of some antenna up saying, wait a second here. We don't know the precise process by the screen scraping. We don't know the precise process of the buckets of words that are used to do the typologies. And so these numbers all have to be taken with a little bit of caution, that these are not BLS official numbers, that these are approximations. And we're using them basically as a thought experiment, not as statistical gospel. But if you take the general direction of where things are going, you've got chemical engineering jobs, about 476 at these companies from the right, Amazon, Apple, the rest of those. So of the biggest employers, only, 5% are of all the chemical engineering jobs are at these companies that we're looking at. So right away you start saying, well, I need to get a job, and somebody like Pfizer only has 128 chemical engineering jobs. Corning has a whopping 41. I'd love to work at Corning. I don't know if I can work all the places they want workers all over the world. I'd better have more plans than just being a chemical engineer at a chemical company and a materials company. So one of the things you can start to do is you look up the list and say, I have a degree in chemical engineering, but I have skills that overlay a lot of other domains. For example, chemistry. Note that there's 5 times as many chemistry jobs as chemical engineering jobs. So maybe some of those might be interesting. How do I reposition myself? How do I reposition my job search? To maybe look at some of those. Statistics. If I'm a chemical engineer, I sure as heck better be able to do statistics, and same thing with math and general engineering. I know project management. I know the basic engineering principles of heat mass and transfer thereof. And so how can I redefine my search now so I can start looking at those? So this kind of a breakdown is really useful as students start to say, well, yes, I've got applications at Pfizer, Corning, Dow, and Shell, but that's still only a few hundred openings. How else can I position myself? And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see the same process sort of graphically illustrated. So I have a chemical engineering degree on the left, and you can start with a chemical engineering background and use your traditional chemical engineering skill set to get a job at Dow. Very, very traditional, happens every day. But I can also say, well, I've got a chemical engineering background, but I'm going to now look at myself as a bucket of skills, and I have process engineering skill, which can be useful in chemicals, but it's also important many other places. If you look back on Monty's last slide, 2 of the top 5 employers of process engineers were financial services firms, USAA and Bank of America. So So now we say, well, if I have process engineering skill, now I look at the process engineering employers, I end up at Tesla. I'm probably not going to be doing chemical engineering at Tesla, but I sure will be doing engineering and processes and system level thinking, all the things I've been trained in. Or I can reconfigure myself and go north and say, I have process engineering and I've picked up machine learning from Lynda or edX or Coursera. And now I can start looking at the world of machine learning employers with my systems thinking that I was taught in chemical engineering. And I'm very desirable at someplace like Amazon, which has plenty of openings. So you notice how starting with a chemical engineering degree, by looking at adjacencies, you now can expand your survey set of potential employers dramatically. Next slide.
So the process used to do this there's two pieces to this career discovery process. One is 5 futures and the other is skills grid. In the 5 futures, we're saying, where do you want to be in 5 years or 10 years? What do you want your career and your life to look like? So these are your future jobs, which you would put in the list in the upper left-hand corner of the upper table. Now you can go to find what skills are needed for those jobs. Look at job openings, look on LinkedIn, look at some other sources, and they say, okay, as John was showing in the previous slide, they say process engineering, but maybe they also want somebody who knows machine learning or data analysis. And so you say, okay, maybe I have the process skills, but I need to upgrade my machine learning training. So you list your target skills and experience required based on the job listings. Then you assess what are my current skills and experience, and then you develop a plan to bridge the gap, the distance between them. I, in fact, had a student do this. She was a chemical engineering PhD. She had good process knowledge, good technical and chemistry knowledge, but she wanted to work to apply those areas into a space with machine learning. So she took some courses from various places, as John said, the Coursera, edX, and so on, and that's the job that she got. So that's the idea, is what jobs do I want, what skills do I need, what skills do I have, and what's my plan for bridging the gap between them. To figure out what skills you have, this is actually a very good exercise. It's called Skills Grid. You say, where have I been? What roles have I been in? Maybe I did a high school play and letter A. Maybe I was on the lacrosse team. Maybe I worked at Old Navy, or whatever your roles have been. Maybe at Penn State we have Thon, a large dance marathon. You figure out what skills you have from those in various categories, and those categories correspond to what target skills do you need. So here we've listed specialized skills, baseline, digital, leadership, innovation, learning skills. For each of those boxes, you come up with a 30-second story that gives an example of a time when you learned, for instance, innovation through your work in a high school employment opportunity, or in Thon, or in an internship or co-op that you've had. So you come up with these 30-second stories, and it has a couple important effects in your skills grid. One is you start to uncover the skills that you actually do have, which sometimes can remain hidden unless you're looking for them. Second, you can say, well, you know what? I've done all these roles, but I've never really done a lot of work with innovation. I better go get an experience while I'm still in school that has something with innovation, so that you can fill in that slot with that box with a 30-second story. So now you take your skills and you bring them back, and you can now target those positions much more effectively. One of the things that the 5 futures does is to focus you, so that you don't just disperse in 100 areas, so that you never gain enough skill in any of them to be employed. By focusing on one of the 5 areas, you can now focus your attention enough so that you learn enough about each of them that you can have possibilities to be employed in one of those 5 futures. Next slide. This is an example from an actual 5 futures that we've done in our classes. We've taught classes together in which we've done this. And this is an example. So you see that this person wrote down as their 5 futures, maybe I want to be an entrepreneur. I might like to be a CEO. I might like to be a professor, or even a high school teacher. So they list out, what might I like to do? They've done some research and figure out what skills are needed and experiences are needed for that position, and those are listed in the second column. In the third column, they, from their skills grid, show here my current skills, and there's a gap between the second column and the third column. So in the fourth column, they say, here's my plan for bridging those gaps. So for being an entrepreneur, you say, okay, you're going to need some project management experience, some finance experience, some venture capital and startup. Well, I know something about the biotech field, and I have experience in programming and developing prototypes. So my plan now is going to be to work in industry to gain that experience so I can build those 30-second stories while studying machine learning, perhaps in the evenings through Coursera or edX or other. So for each of these, you say, what do I need? What do I have? What's my plan for filling that gap? And you're doing this by coming up with these 30-second stories and creating them. Next slide. This is an actual handwritten example. This is how we actually come up with the results in the classroom. And in this case, the student listed the roles that she had, listed the technical skills, the communication, leadership, innovation, learning experience. And if you look under the fourth row, crew member at Dunkin' Donuts, and under the column under innovation, this was such an interesting one. A way to solve the hot chocolate problem. There was a problem in which this student came up with a clever way to overcome the fact that one of their machines was broken. That turned into a whole story that was later translatable to an interview experience to secure a position. Next slide.
So those are the skills grid and 5 futures. And we started out by talking about begin with the end in mind. So another thing we've been doing is we've been having people with experience come to the classroom and talk about their own career and their own career learnings. Not talk about their company, but talk about their journey, the turns they made, the things they learned, the skills and experiences they found valuable, and then advice that they have for younger people. And we found this to be a great way to get a perspective on what's out in the marketplace, and to have then a Q&A with students to talk about, the types of things that they may encounter as they get into the workplace. This is possible to do with alumni. There's any number of people, and we found that when asked to do this, to talk about the career, not their company, many are very willing, and it turns out to be a remarkably fun experience. And the next slide. The next slide's a list of, how do we actually run these sessions? There's no one prescribed format. Sometimes we run them as events, and these would be the possible things we go through. We talk about in the first session, just a general concept of the career discovery process. We then have students go and break out and draft their 5 futures and their skills grids. And one of the things we really like to do is break them into small groups and let them share them among themselves, and then come report out to the overall group. There's an enormous amount of learning and insight one gets when you listen to students talk about things they're interested in, some of their career interests and experiences they've had. And so they can be very interactive. And when you engage outside speakers at various times, that can also be extremely interesting and informative. So we'll go through the 5 futures and skills grids and then wrap it up and have a summary. And ideally, people will leave with their plan and thoughts about what might they like to do and what do they think they need to do to get there. We also use this in classes. So in various classes where we are teaching extra skills or incremental skills above the curriculum, we'll do this, and then we'll have students start out talking about their 5 futures, and we use that through the class then as we talk about business, finance, project management, do an innovation project, but try and tie it back to the skills and experiences they're going to need as they move towards graduation. So on the next slide, John has a summary.
So as you've heard, we talked about the career discovery process, how important it is to think of your job aspirations as a story and a set of stories rather than a degree or a GPA. Beginning with the end in mind and thinking about the 5 futures and working backwards from there. And thinking of yourself as a bucket of skills rather than a degree and a credential. This is very much echoing what's happening in the employment market, where tech companies in particular are now relaxing their requirement of a college degree for even advanced technical roles. If you can program, I don't care if you have a degree. If you can be taught to be a security analyst, security specialist, IBM will start you off paying well above minimum wage and train you up to watch a console, and eventually augment your skills from there. So this thinking is very much widespread right now, given the labor shortages. And finally, as you look at the skills market, there's a lot of surprises, opportunities. Every time you think you have an answer, you dig deeper and there's more questions, like that one chemical engineering position at Shell, like those process engineers at USAA. So the great thing is to teach students about the fact that these research efforts are really ongoing, that you're not going to find the magic answer, but rather it's an ongoing dialogue, it's an ongoing act of reflection. And the skills grid is actually very useful for mid-career professionals as well. With that, we'll go to the Burning Glass portion of the program.
Thanks very much. My name is Gretchen Novak. I'm a partnership director, and I help to manage our relationship with Penn State. And I'm going to share a bit more information now on Burning Glass. Next. First off, we were founded in 1999, and we are a labor analytics company. We support over 400 higher education institutions, ranging from community colleges to large research universities. We also work with government and corporate entities. Next. We have the nation's largest database of job postings. We use AI technology to scrape over 35,000 online job sites on an ongoing basis. From there, we collect and we deduplicate over 1 million job postings on a daily basis. Once the information is aggregated, we then parse out the facts of the job posting. So some of those include skills, educational attainment level preferred by employers, certifications, and work activities required for the job, as well as information about salary, number of openings, and industry. And then we analyze all this data, we tag it, and we put it into a unique taxonomy of occupations. Next. So some impacts our data can offer current students and prospective students that I wanted to point out are helping students find a career path based on interests, skills, and goals, understand the ROI of a program because they lead to good jobs, identify skills that will make students more marketable, and identify and learn about potential employers and industries. Next. I'm going to talk briefly about the 3 core solutions that we offer for higher ed. So first off, Labor Insight. This is our flagship research platform. It's used to analyze the labor market locally and/or nationally. As Penn State recognized early on, new skills and occupations are emerging every day. You can use this in-depth labor market data to connect your programs to jobs of the future and develop a curriculum based on real-time data. You can also identify high-demand industries, occupations, and skills that ultimately connect back to your programs, making students workforce ready. Next slide. We also analyze online resume data, and this is really important because understanding what alumni are doing after they graduate can provide an overall understanding of how your programs are preparing students for the job market. This dashboard is within Labor Insight, and it helps to showcase alumni career success. You can see where alumni are employed, see their occupations 1, 3, 5 years out, and more. Next. Program Insight combines Burning Glass's real-time job data with additional public data sources. So data sources like Bureau of Labor Statistics and IPED's degree control information. All of this is within Program Insight, and it synthesizes all of it so you can explore and validate new offerings and programs based on occupations and skills in demand. Next. And then finally, we offer Career Insight. And what this is a student-facing interactive tool, which we embed on institutional program web pages. so that learners can understand how enrolling in your academic programs will unlock career opportunities. It also supports marketing and enrollment departments with lead conversions based on students' needs and career interests. Next. So that was just a brief overview. Thank you. And I think we're going to open it up to questions now.
Yes, thank you, Gretchen. And thank you so much to our panelists. That was fantastic. And we really appreciate you all being here today and sharing these stories. Well, there were a couple of comments that came in that were just comments saying, talking about the stories and how creating the story and helping students create the story is really valuable in helping them and goes beyond the standard academic piece that we offer, try to provide to students. So fantastic stuff, thank you. And there were some questions that came in as well. The first one is going to be to our panelists, and it's, how difficult was this to implement?
I'll start, and this is something, as John mentioned at the start, it's been evolving, and a lot of this actually goes back to my early years in industry. And I used to use this as part of career planning with people. And then when I got to Penn State, we started working together and working with students. And so over time, it's evolved to what we've shared today. We have a number of files that we share with other people. And I should also say that the AICHE, we've launched the new Institute for Learning and Innovation. And one of the offerings there is the same career discovery through the AICHE. But
Monty, can I add one thing to what you said? You said you used this early on in your career to help people as they were starting their careers. Many of them I know still contact you, right? Asking for, hey, I'm looking for a new position. I've been in this for 20 years now, looking for a new position. And some of them even send you their skills grids.
Yeah, that's what happens. I think, we didn't talk about it today, but what I call the skills, the career view versus sort of the functional view. And, a lot of engineers will start off in a technical role. They go into marketing, product management, sales, business. And then as they evolve through their career, they may change companies, and people look for advice. And so this is good to, being older, you can share your own personal experiences and then hear what their interests are. And I've also found this where people are interested in having a recommendation. The skills grid in their 5 futures provides, good information for writing recommendations.
And in terms of ease of implementation, you can't get much simpler than a single piece of paper.
And that's really important. Just make it simple. And I think what we found is students very often will think in terms of what they've learned at the university, all of the skills they have throughout their whole life, where they've had a summer job in a golf course, or they worked in Dunkin' Donuts, anywhere. Those skills can be invaluable in the workplace today, and capturing those skills and experiences is all part of this.
I think things represent much more broadly. So that hot chocolate mixing problem, that's an image. That was an image in that student's mind, and they were able to just talk about it in terms of the details, and it gives a lot of credibility to the fact that, hey, I was there, and here's what happened, and here's how I solved this problem that seemed insurmountable at the time. And so it really gives a lot of credibility and juice to the story.
Thank you. Those are always very helpful, and everybody in an interview has been asked that question. Tell us a story about a time when, and these are essentially helping tell those stories. And a follow-up question to this came in that was fairly interesting, which was, have any other departments or entities at Penn State used or implemented this program?
We have done it in departments. We did it in materials. We did it with chemistry, and we've done it. I'm not sure though, Monty. Are you aware of any other departments who have done it?
Yeah, with mechanical engineering, we've done some of this, and then we've been running various events. Grad students with a recent event. This is why we started with AICHE, because AICHE is a professional society, a lot of chemical engineers. There's a whole, we can sample across universities and companies, and it's a challenge that everybody faces, and this is particularly true in the chemical engineering industries that are represented by AICHE.
I pitched it to the business school, but then I took the new job at Syracuse, so that never came through. But yes, they were interested for sure.
Great, thank you. And for people, there's a couple questions about this, but it's essentially on how to get started. What would you recommend to a fellow educator who wants to do something like this? They're not sure where to start. What is the first step that you would recommend to a fellow educator who wants to do a similar type of program?
Well, we've created, a couple standard slide decks, and I went through the four sessions there of career discovery. We're happy to share those with people. And then we have one Excel template we use now to have students fill out their 5 futures and their skills grid. And just using those and going into the classroom and starting with the 5 futures and asking students, what 5 things might you like to do someday? Get them to do that, and then break them into groups and have them start talking to one another. That usually begins things pretty well on itself. The advantage of having it in Excel then is it's easy with a macro then to extract everything. You can start to look at the similarities and the differences across different groups of students and classes. But anyone who's interested would be happy to share our experiences and help you get started. And in turn, we'd love to hear what you've learned and learn from your experience.
One of the things it took us a little while to get hold of some burning glass data. The contract process was a little bit long, given how Penn State is organized. This was not on Burning Glass's side, it was on Penn State. We have 24 distinct campuses, and getting anything through purchasing is a headache. So if you're a Burning Glass customer already, getting hold of this data should be more straightforward, because the data is a really important part of the exercise. If you go back to that first, maybe 4th slide, where you have the red dotted line, basically short circuiting the 4-year feedback loop into maybe a 1-year feedback loop. And so you're getting close to it right there, yeah. So if you look at that labor market discovery in red letters, that's very tough to do with BLS data. You can get closer, but Burning Glass was far superior for that purpose.
And I think it's important to remember that it's, there are 2 parts. There's finding the job and there's upgrading your job. So Burning Glass provides not only baseline skills and technical skills or domain-specific skills that would be needed, they have what's called distinguishing skills. So they say, you know what, you have this body of knowledge. If you would just add this little extra piece, here are some new possibilities for dramatically increasing your influence and your pay and your career possibilities. I think that's really interesting to be able to use data to guide that career decision.
As I mentioned, I got started on this many years ago, and you're a chemical engineer and working in R&D, and then you want to move into a business. And then if you're in a business, you move from technology into the manufacturing or product management or marketing. You'll find, with respect to chemical engineers, you'll find them everywhere. CEOs of companies, entrepreneurs, law. And so there's some way they got to those positions. And this provides a means for getting to think about it. The other thing I found to be very valuable is being specific about what jobs do you think you want. People can help you. If you just say, I want to do something new and interesting, I like technology, I like data analysis, it's hard for people to help you. But if you can be specific, you can get a lot better feedback. And most people are very willing to help when possible.
Thank you. And actually, a question I think is just kind of related to that about getting started, working with other departments within Penn State, particularly from the Office of Career Development or career counselors. Have they been involved in this, or has there been any discussion with them about how they might be able to implement this?
Yeah, so we've talked about that, and I've done things with the mechanical engineering department. I think one of the things that's a challenge is that if you go back to that slide you were just on a minute ago, every department has a grouping of skills. And so what we're now doing is thinking about, is there a general model we could make available to multiple departments that teaches incremental skills that are common across industries? Most engineering disciplines, students understanding project management better, finance, especially this category, process engineering. There's a lot that could be done, but the traditional university is very siloed, so it takes people that see this and have an interest to do this. Career services has also been really good, but One of the students, a couple of years ago, we were talking about this, and the student said, we get lots of help organizing what we've done. We need help figuring out what to do. And this is where this is particularly useful, I think, because we get people thinking about what might they like to do someday, what do they think they need to do to get there, and then talk to people in the marketplace. Look at burning glass data. Talk to your colleagues and peers. Talk to recent graduates. It really creates a much more informative discussion, as well as create a network of people with whom you can go search out jobs and find a position.
In my experience, the career counseling offices still think in terms of degrees. Maybe they're getting toward badges and micro certifications, but they're not to the level of skills yet. And so if I come into a career counseling office, I don't get this kind of granularity. They say, well, you're an accountant, or you're a chemical engineer, or you're an advertising major. Who might hire you? And it's still at that next level of abstraction. And so I think there's still a mind change in many career counseling offices that has to happen.
I think there's a shift from who might hire me, which says you're sort of supplicating for a job, to what do I want one of my 5 features to be? And when those students start to get together and talk about this, there's some really wild ones that come up. Monty probably has some examples of those, but they start to talk amongst each other, and then they say, oh yeah, do you remember that Paul started a business in this area, or that Natalie went to this school and got a very non-traditional graduate degree, and this person went to work with PricewaterhouseCoopers as a chemical engineer. They start to understand that there are many other possibilities based on these adjacencies that we showed earlier in the talk. I think it's very powerful when the students start to teach each other about the future careers.
Great, good to hear that there's a shift and an opportunity for a continued conversation there, because everybody's in it for the same reason, right? We're all trying to do better for our students and help them do better. So thank you. This next question is actually, I think Gretchen is going to be the best person for this, is can students see job data or burning glass data or internships that are available for the fields they're interested in? And similarly, how would a student access this info if it isn't something that's offered in a class or a module like it was here at Penn State?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so that's a great question. We have a lot of clients who use Labor Insight in career development and services offices, and they will pull up open job opportunities. You can pull the live job opportunities open within Labor Insight, and you can drill down by specific employers. And then also we have a filter where you can look specifically at internship opportunities. So we do have a lot of clients in career services that will sit down with students and do those types of searches. And then additionally, the student-facing tool that we have, Career Insight, students can explore with occupational pathways and then learn more information about what the role entails in terms of skills, who are top employers, and gather more information that way.
Thank you, Gretchen. And another question about burning glass data that I'll field to you is, most job postings do not list salary information. And so how does Burning Glass fill in the gaps for that category?
So there's a number of different data sources that we use. We do a lot of projection modeling to identify particular occupations that have a salary premium based on skills. But it is based on some census data, some additional data sources where we can capture salary information. Of course, if salary ranges are listed in the job posting, then we will analyze that as well. So in a nutshell, it's kind of a combination of a lot of different data sources that we access to do the modeling.
Great, thank you. And I do just want to note one thing is that we've had a lot of really great questions coming in. I doubt we'll be able to get to all of them, but I did want to let everybody know that we will address them all directly to you, so you will get your question answered. And also, we will be including this information, these links here in the follow-up email that includes the recording. So we know they're not clickable, but they will be available in the follow-up email after. We do have the next question. I think it's going to be best for our panel here. And I'm actually going to kind of combine two questions here. And it goes back to something that you mentioned earlier. Have you worked with any employers to help connect students to jobs or other interests? And another similar question was, do you have any other similar stories? I think it came in after the hot chocolate example of students who have had a light bulb moment where they were going to do something different than they originally thought.
Yeah, let me start with the first one on employers. So this is something we've been doing with AICHE. And we actually have an advisory council of companies. And actually Laura Matz is one of the members of the advisory council. So we've been looking at an internship program. We think of it as Internship Prep Academy. So AICH, we've aggregated students who are interested in internships. So we have 750 students. And Dow and EMD Group are interested in data science interns. They want chemical engineers who understand data science. And so we've gone through and they've shared the skills they'd like students to have. We've created a curriculum, and then they've hired a number of interns from this pool. And then the companies are paying for additional data science training to prepare those students for these internship jobs. And one of the things that happened, Laura mentioned the other day, was they're doing it with the number of interns they hired through the program. The other interns heard about this and they all want to take the same class. And so employers have been very interested in this, very willing to help share the types of skills and experiences that they'd like to have people have as part of being hired. And so this has been going very well. And that's why I mentioned that link to AICHE/ILI. A lot of our discussion is where just doing this at the university is not nearly as effective as coupling university and workplace and having a direct feedback loop from the market. What are the emerging skills? What are the jobs that are needed? And then what are the things we can add to the curriculum at the university, or what adjacent skills and experiences are necessary? And through the AICHE, this is where we're putting together initiatives to prepare students along these lines.
One of the things that's interesting is working with student societies, because in a perfect world, the university curriculum would change almost as fast as labor markets do, but that's not the case. And so to say, hey, we want to put more data science in the chemical engineering curriculum, that could take 5 years if there's will to do it. Whereas the AICHE student chapter can say, hey, look, here's some Lynda modules, here's some Coursera modules. I'll do brown bags based on my summer internship experience. Part of the Internship Prep Academy idea back however many years it was this interface layer between students and the workplace that the classroom wasn't preparing. And then you close the loop with student interns coming back in September, talking again to the student chapter of AICHE, SME, whatever it is, and saying, hey, here's what I learned that I wish I knew. I would have gone into my internship much more prepared to add value quickly. And the smart kids are all listening to that, and then we'll feedback that into next summer's internships as well. So I think it's quite literally extracurricular pathways are really useful here.
And then to the second part of the question, what I'd add there is when you become a chemical engineer, I think very often, especially when you're younger, you think that defines you as a box. I'm a chemical engineer. And what we continue to emphasize is chemical engineering is a platform for just about anything you might want to do in life. It's just a fantastic background. So I tell students it's chemical engineering plus X. The other things you do, you either learn or experiences you have, it's very important. And this, I think, can be very liberating. So when we look at these 5 futures, we get material scientist, professor, process engineer at Dow, and then we'll see brewmaster, civil service, entrepreneur. I mean, some of the 5 futures the students come up with are just outstanding. And the thing is, the pathway to get there is a lot simpler from being a chemical engineer than they would normally think. And they begin to think about, what do I need to do? What experiences do I need to have to get there? And then with people like Laura coming in and talking about their own life experiences and advice, In this particular talk here, Laura just talked about the power of yes. When you have an opportunity to join a team or be part of a new initiative, say yes, because you will meet people, you will learn things, you will experience or learn about opportunities you hadn't known existed. These are things that are just so important, especially in today's world that's infinitely connected and global.
I wanted to emphasize one thing Monty just said, which I think emphasized something that John said. This concept that, hey, if this is the future that I want, but maybe you don't know that yet. And in 5 years you get there, and like we were talking about that slow loop, things I wish I would have known. You might think, boy, I wish instead of having a chemical engineering degree, I wish I had an economics degree. I wish I had a degree in political science or whatever it is. You don't have to start completely over. You can just add certain skills to that. And if you see yourself as a set of skills rather than as a degree, you realize I don't have to start this 4-year process over or this 8-year process over. I can take 3 months, learn what I need to from a MOOC, a Coursera course, an edX course, add on those few skills that I need to dramatically change the direction of my future. It's so powerful.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. We're actually just take one more question. And again, we will get to everyone's question directly. We will follow up with you if we did not get to it on today's session. But I believe this, Gretchen, this one is for you. And is there a mechanism for suggesting job adjacencies given current attained skills, given the current skills they have?
Yes. So we actually, for each occupation, we map out related occupations that have transferable skills, and then actually show based on that related job, what are the skills needed to transition into that occupation. So it's a very powerful tool that will help students see, maybe I thought I wanted to pursue this career, but actually this other career, which has some which I already have some skills, I can move into that role.
And that's a way that maybe these professional leaders can spark a different thought in students' minds, and then they could actually go back and explore those different thoughts using this program and these tools. So that's fantastic. And with that, we are going to end that here, just because to be respectful of everybody's time and to give everyone some time to their next meeting, which we know many of you likely have, as do some of us here on this panel. So to be respectful of everybody, we'd like to thank you all so much. Again, the information on the final slide will be included in the follow-up email. Thank you everybody so much for coming. Thank you to our panelists. The contact information will be included as well. Well, thank you everybody. Have a great Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.